vast underground city has been discovered beneath the pyramids.
Man. Okay, I've been researching for like the past 2 hours. There's been a groundbreaking discovery made recently. Something we did not expect to be finding, and it's a complete mystery to us because nobody knows for sure. There's a lot of conspiracy here. Pretty much there's a pyramid in Egypt called the Khafre Pyramid. It's not the Giza Pyramid. It's located in Giza in Egypt, but it's called the Khafre Pyramid. They found structures that were beneath the pyramid. There's this MDPI study, which uses advanced synthetic aperture radar. Now, the scans revealed undiscovered chambers and complex underground structures hidden inside the pyramid. What they found was these spiral pillars and connecting rods, which is hinting at an unknown engineering technique, a lost technology. This isn't actually anything confirmed yet. We don't even know if those structures are actually even there. This is all based on this synthetic aperture radar, SAR, which to my understanding is a satellite, which shoots this beam directly at the pyramid. And as that beam comes back, it measures it from different angles to see a 3D picture of what's happening underneath the pyramid. For years, people have been fascinated by the pyramids of Egypt, and most scientists have come to the conclusion that these 150-meter hand-built stone pyramids are simply tombs. See, the reason why this is so amazing is because with what we know about the ancient Egyptians, something like this should just not be possible.
Briefly summarized, these findings allowed us to construct a 3D model of the entire complex. Radars enabled a 3D reconstruction, most of the objects inside the Pyramid of Khafre. The analysis of the structures above Belzoni's chamber are intensely colored spots which can be observed appearing in all tomographic images corresponding to the internal artificial structures.
Now, what's interesting is that none of the official research papers mention anything about the cylinders. They don't mention anything about the spirals that go around the pillars. It has everything to do with actually what's inside of the pyramid. And again, this is all unconfirmed stuff, so we don't really know what's going on here yet.
So this is the raw pictures of the data that they used to create their model, showing the presence of vertical structures. And if you think that was pretty mind-blowing, it then goes on to say, as observed in the 3D model below the ground level, so ground zero of the main structure, vertically aligned cylindrical structures extend for hundreds of meters beneath the Giza plateau. Notably, 8 of these structures, arranged in 2 parallel rows from north to south, descend to a depth of 648 meters. The paper then adds to that with some even more interesting detail, which is that the 8 cylindrical structures that have been identified in the tomographical image appear as vertical wells which are hollow inside and surrounded by descending spiral pathways. The tomographic images clearly reveal that the structures exist beneath the plateau, extending below the pyramids of Khafre, Khufu, and Menkaure for approximately 2 kilometers below ground. So mind-blowing as all that is, there's still more to come, and this is just a little bit of the information that they have shared with us so far.
See, the question is, what is going on here? There's a lot of facts that are being dismissed as nothing but hoaxes, but there is a lot of concrete research here that I do think is worth looking into.
And welcome to the Expedition channel, the official channel of the Khafre project. This is an announcement in my role as head of communications for the research project. I will now read the official press release of the Khafre project regarding the Giza Plateau. A vast underground city has been discovered beneath the pyramids. It is the mythical Amenti.
The Amenti is already a very interesting subject, because the Amenti means the underworld, or the afterlife realm. What it was for was this place where the souls would pass through to be judged by the weighing of the heart. So this was a place of judgment, a place for the dead to go to, and the whole place was ruled by the god of the underworld, Osiris. Of course, it's very curious for why they would even bring this up in this discovery. What does the underworld have to do with this pyramid?
During the press conference, for the first time ever, structures believed to correspond to the legendary halls of Amenti will be revealed. The main discoveries to be presented include the identification of structures, rooms, and corridors within the Pyramid of Khafre. The discovery of an extensive network of vertical shafts, estimated to extend at least 1 kilometer deep beneath each Great Pyramid, which appear to serve as access points to this underground system.
If this is true, this completely rules out any possibility of the ancient Egyptians actually being the people to build the pyramids. You know, it's one thing to say that these people with stone tools built these 150-meter tall pyramids, over 2 million blocks in some cases, blocks weighing over a ton. But now to add to this,
the structures exist beneath the plateau, 2 kilometers below ground.
It seems like the pyramid itself is actually the tip of the iceberg. And the question now is, how did they do this?
The existence of vast chambers beneath the Earth's surface, comparable in size to the pyramids themselves, a remarkably strong correlation between the layout and characteristics of these underground chambers and the legendary halls of Amenti, as described in ancient myths, including those associated with the god Thoth.
Okay, now Thoth is the ancient Egyptian god of wisdom. And you might have actually heard of this thing called the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. And this is really where the rabbit hole goes deep. Now, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth are a set of mystical writings attributed to Thoth. Most modern references to this come from a 20th century text from Maurice Doreal. It's important to know that 100% of historians and archaeologists agree that there is no evidence that these tablets are authentically ancient Egyptian artifacts. They're actually considered modern esoteric fiction, so not real historical relics because there's no proof, there's no physical tablets that have ever been found. And on top of this, the writing style doesn't even match genuine ancient Egyptian writings. So obviously, don't just believe everything you're gonna hear at face value. I'm warning you right now, this is a blend of occult and esoteric fiction. So truly, please be careful with what you retain out of this book. But with that being said, what are these Emerald Tablets of Thoth even about? Well, Maurice Doreal, the author of this book, claimed that they were ancient and powerful texts which contained secret knowledge of alchemy and the universe. This book speaks about Thoth's origins, who describes himself as an immortal being from Atlantis, who later came to Egypt to bring knowledge and civilization. But interestingly, it also speaks about the halls of Amenti, this underworld that we keep hearing about. See, in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the halls of Amenti are described as a hidden mystical realm beneath the earth, where souls journey after their death. See, Thoth claims that he discovered the secrets of Amenti, using it as a place of regeneration to maintain his immortality. Historically, this concept of Amenti, in the tablets especially, has no basis in actual ancient Egyptian texts. Like I said, it's considered a blend of occult fiction and symbolic esoteric teachings rather than real ancient knowledge. Now, there are a lot of other theorists and archaeologists who suspect that the Egyptian pyramids were rather found by the ancient Egyptians. The most known among these people has to be Graham Hancock.
How do I think the pyramids were built? To be honest, I have no answer to that question.
Many archaeologists in the past were either not allowed to dig deeper or were simply turned away from actually being able to research these pyramids from a different perspective than what is commonly known.
And anybody who tells you that he or she knows how the pyramids were built are not telling the truth, because we don't know.
It almost seems like mainstream archaeology has been trying to gatekeep the narrative.
The Great Pyramid weighs 6 million tons. We can calculate that from its mass. It weighs 6 million tons. More than 2.5 million individual blocks of stone were used in its construction. That monument has encoded and speaks out the dimensions of our planet on a scale of 1 to 43,200. And the scale is not random. How on earth did they do it? Where did that knowledge come from? This is why I'm forced to consider the possibility of a lost civilization. This is a work of almost, but not quite, space-age precision. It contains errors, but they are human errors for sure, but they're very tiny. The great precision, great skill The Great Pyramid, I've climbed it 5 times. I've been in every known chamber in the Great Pyramid. It is a work of stunning artistic achievement. You're looking at the work of masters of architecture at the peak of their skill. There are blocks of stone weighing 70 tons that have been raised more than 300 feet above the ground. And we're not talking a couple of blocks, we're talking dozens of blocks. The average block weighs about 2.5 tons. It's the moving of those huge blocks of stone, their arrangement into a high precision monument, and the achievement of actually doing it. Because you know, if you make a small mistake at the base, by the time you get to the summit of your 481-foot high pyramid, you don't have a pyramid, you have a corkscrew. And nobody today can explain how they did it with the knowledge that is supposed to have been available in ancient Egypt and with the tools that are supposed to have been available. And that's why I can't help feeling that we are missing some chapter from the human story.
Now, what's really interesting is that these pillars look a lot like a solenoid, which is a type of coil which is used in modern technology to create a magnetic field or to create magnetic flux, which can then be converted into electricity in some conditions. That is both how we can create alternating current electricity. It's how you can create heat. It seems like we're leaning towards a hypothesis that there may actually have been some lost, forgotten technology that we don't know about today.
Now, Egyptologists will tell you that, they could move heavy blocks because they put them on wet sand and they push them along on wet sand. Well, maybe if you're just at ground level, that will do. But when you're 350 feet above the ground, as you are in the King's Chamber, that won't do at all. I don't know how they did it. All I know is they did it. I don't think anybody knows how they did it. I think we're looking, again, at a lost technology.
According to Graham, this hypothetical advanced civilization would have been lost due to them being wiped out by a massive cataclysm, potentially from a comet impact during the Younger Dryas period, which ended about 12,000 years ago. Now remember that number.
Ancient apocalypse, 12,800 years ago, that wiped that from the human memory banks almost completely, not entirely completely because there were survivors.
Interestingly, 12,000 years ago is when we start seeing the very first man-made structures like Göbekli Tepe, another archaeological site that includes massive megaliths built from single-cut rocks, a mystery similar to the ancient Egyptian pyramids. Even Atlantis, according to Plato, who is the primary source for this myth, speaks about this advanced city, which was punished by the gods before being lost to the sea. But get this, Atlantis, according to Plato, existed in around 9,600 BC. Once again, just about 12,000 years ago.
I mean, imagine your sea level rising at 3 or 4 times, at least, very rapid sea level rise. And anything that's there, short of large megalithic blocks, is going to be utterly obliterated by the time the process is through. You know, the archaeologists and the prehistorians, people are looking at that, have failed to take into account the severity of these events we're talking about. Imagine that you drop an atomic bomb on a city and it completely obliterates it. And then a short while later, you drop another one on the same place. What's going to be left?
See, the common denominator here is this theory of a massive cataclysm happening around 12,000 years ago, either by a comet or by something else. What seems to be true is how civilization only goes as far back as the end of the last ice age, which was around 11,600 years ago. Now, obviously, this is going to ring a bell with us Christians. In the book of Genesis, it too describes a cataclysm, but in this case, it was a massive worldwide flood. Now, the time frames are not going to match up here, but I honestly don't think we should be comparing historical evidence to the Bible anyways. Instead, what's more relevant, I think, is just the story.
Now, it came to pass when humanity started to multiply, and a lot more daughters were being born.
You see, in Genesis, as humanity grows in the world and becomes increasingly advanced, but more importantly, increasingly evil, in these days, it says in the Bible that all flesh had been corrupted. But that's only part of the story. You see, before the flood, in Genesis 6:4, it explains how these sons of God would enter into the daughters of men, who then gave birth to the Nephilim, the giants or heroes of old.
The daughters of men were beautiful, And the angels, the sons of God, they saw and they lusted after them. They said, "Come, let us choose wives from among the children of men and beget us our own children." But Semyaza, who was their leader, he said to them, "I fear that not all of you will agree to this deed. I fear that I alone will have to pay the penalty for this great sin." So they all answered him and said, "Let us all swear an oath by binding us all together to not abandon this plan." And so they all swore together.
Humanity had this long period before the flood where they had built up civilization, in a time when the sons of God, or the angels of heaven, were actually there with them on the earth. And it kind of makes you wonder, how advanced would this civilization be? This is exactly before God floods the entire world, essentially resetting it. A massive, worldwide cataclysm. There is another story which expands on this time before the flood. The Book of Enoch.
Every angel chose for himself a wife and defiled themselves with them. They taught them charms and enchantments, the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. But when they became pregnant, they bore these great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells. These creatures consumed all the toil of men, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against us and devoured mankind. Azazel, a fallen angel, taught men how to make swords, knives, and shields, and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth, and the art of working them. He revealed all sorts of ornaments, the beautification of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones. Because of this, there arose much godlessness. Through this, they committed all kinds of fornication, and were led astray. Semyaza taught enchantments and root cuttings. Armoros taught the resolving of enchantments. Barakiel taught astrology. Kokabiel taught the constellations. Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds. Arakiel the signs of the earth. Shemasiel the signs of the sun. And Sariel the course of the moon. They all knew the secrets of the earth, bringing both knowledge and havoc. The angels exploited the fruitfulness of the earth, harvesting everything the earth produced. One day, these angels would choose 200 donkeys, 200 goats, and 200 beasts from the field, from every animal and from every bird. For miscegenation, they defiled God's creatures, breaking all sorts of natural boundaries, introducing a new kind of giant, the terrible monsters. These beings of horror only sought to feed on living flesh, but as men perished, their cry went all the way up to heaven, where God could hear. Something needed to be done. Enoch was the seventh from Adam, and a righteous man. He testified to those fallen angels who had sinned with the daughters of men. A great judgment was passed against them, and Enoch testified against them all, explaining that there will be no more forgiveness for these angels. Semyaza, Azazel, and all their associates are to be bound within the depths of the earth, never to see light again. Now Enoch's father, Methuselah, took a wife for his son Lamech, and when she became pregnant by him and bore a son, his body was white as snow and red as a rose. His hair was as white as wool, and his eyes were beautiful. Noah grows up. But one day, Noah is told by a holy angel, Uriel, he must hide himself. He is needed for a mission in the future. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, but the earth was corrupt in God's sight. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people. I'm going to destroy them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood and coat it with pitch. Bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female. Noah did everything as God had commanded them. When the floodwaters came on the earth, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. Noah and his sons and his wives and his sons' wives, entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Rain fell down on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and as the waters rose increasingly, every living thing that moved on land died. By the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, the waters had dried up from the earth. The ark had landed somewhere in the mountains of Ararat. Noah, together with his sons and his wives and his sons' wives, and all the animals and all the creatures that were in the ark, all finally come outside, one kind after another. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, before sacrificing some burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelt this pleasing aroma, and said in his heart, "Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of the flood. And I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and this is the sign of my covenant. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth, and the rainbow appears, I will remember my covenant between you and me."